This is a presentation on the Milken Institute study examining Arizona's Technology and Research Initiative Fund that was commissioned by the Flinn Foundation. The Milken Institute, for those of you who are not aware, is a nonpartisan, nonprofit economic think tank based in California with a focus on job creation, access to capital, and health. We have offices not only in California, but in Washington, D.C., in Singapore, New York, and London. The focus of this specific report was to examine the overall role of the Technology and Research Initiative Fund, TRIF, and the broader impact of TRIF on the development of an innovation economy over the years of its existence in Arizona, and its ongoing broader impacts even to this day on issues ranging from startups, capital access, workforce issues, and broader research and the research environment being conducted not only within the Arizona economy as a whole, but directly in connection to Arizona's three premier public research universities, the University of Arizona, Arizona State University, and Northern Arizona University, and impacts that spread throughout the entire state. As global competition has increased, it's incredibly important to understand that Arizona's inherent advantages in terms of being a low-cost, low-regulation state have placed it in a competitive business standpoint, but it has also meant that the need for relationships, particularly strong ones, between academic and industry researchers, between universities involved in technology research, technology transfer, and the private sector is incredibly important, because Arizona is not only facing competition from within the United States, but increasingly from overseas. TRIF has had significant impacts in Arizona's research spending, its overall impact, both in terms of GDP and employment. From 2013 to 2018, Arizona has seen high-tech employment rise by an impressive 15%, and high-tech GDP rise by an even more remarkable 27%. That's a huge, significant amount of activity and growth. That's, in fact, been even surpassed by the TRIF impact of its funding on return on investment that the Arizona University system has seen from 2012 to 2019, from $232 million to $433 million. This has also been mirrored by a tremendous growth in patents issued, in startups formed, and broader overall impacts that can be seen in employment and throughout the private sector. Proposition 301 was passed by Arizona voters in November of 2000. It established, among other things, the state's Technology and Research Initiative Fund, TRIF, which we are profiling as part of this research. TRIF was set aside 12% of the money from the sales tax increase that was meant to fund university research and tech transfer operations. However, TRIF is not alone in creating and funding the broader innovation ecosystem in the state. The money that was set aside, both for community college workforce development programs at 3%, and the vast majority of funds, 85%, which was set aside for K-12 funding, are all important to create the broader ecosystem, not only of tech transfer, but the education and development of the students who are essential to this broader ecosystem. Since TRIF was established in 2001 as a result of the 2000 Prop 301 vote, it's provided over $1.12 billion to develop projects in certain Arizona Board of Regents approved policy areas. The Arizona Board of Regents has to continuously appropriate and examine the various monies that are received through TRIF, and to make sure that the initiatives involved support health, national security, water, environmental, energy solutions, space exploration, and optical solutions. In other words, key areas that Arizona has a comparative advantage and is being utilized to further build and strengthen the Arizona ecosystem. The Milken Institute issues its Best Performing Cities Index every year to measure not only job growth and wage growth in metropolitan areas around the United States, but also an examination of growth in high-tech economic activity in those metros. In particular, the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale metro has been a strong performer, going from a relatively low 136th place in 2011 all the way up to 20th place in the year 2018, the most recent year for which an index was issued at the time of this report. In looking at a variety of states in the report to compare Arizona to, we specifically looked at states that Arizona would be positioned to compete against, both in terms of geography and in terms of comparable resources and research universities in attracting both high-tech and life science research and talent. In spite of being placed against some fairly fierce competition, Arizona did quite well. Arizona's GDP growth in high-tech and life sciences actually outstripped on a percentage basis most of the other states involved, only falling behind California, which received a huge amount of international investment, Nevada, which was growing from a relatively low level and in many ways benefiting from an overflow from California, and Utah, which in many ways reflects sort of the model that Arizona is competing against, a state that has especially pushed hard to attract money, research, and overall investment and innovation into the state. Over the next few slides, we look at specific data that was collected over the lifespan of TRIF since its establishment in 2001 by Arizona State University and the University of Arizona. Because this data was not collected for this entire time period by Northern Arizona University, it is not shown on these graphs, even though TRIF had a clear and demonstrable impact at NAU as well. Our first slide looks at the growth of startups formed, which has been a fairly consistent upward trend at both universities since the establishment of TRIF back in 2001. Startups are an incredibly important metric because of the fact that they show new activity in terms of small businesses that are able to grow and thrive, and to see the clear results of tech transfer going from the universities to the private sector. The growth in the number of patents issued is another significant metric in showing overall levels of research activity at the public universities in Arizona and how they have resulted in clear, demonstrable contributions in intellectual property. As you can see in this chart, the overall level of activity stayed relatively constant in terms of patents issued until taking off around 2011, where each of the universities has been outperforming peers around the country and significantly increasing the number of patents issued to each of them. The growth of research expenditures at the two larger public universities is also another metric of the impact and return of TRIF funding. The growth of these research expenditures has been generally on an upward slope throughout the existence of TRIF, even during periods of economic downturns, and their overall ability to contribute to the state economy even during these downturns is important, as having a broader exposure to high-tech, knowledge-based activity is extremely important in giving Arizona a more robust economy. As ASU has established itself and built new facilities, it has increasingly been able to grow in activity and to start to match the University of Arizona as a nationally recognized premier research university. The growth of research expenditures at the two larger public universities in Arizona is incredibly important. Not only has this growth managed to be relatively recession-proof, but it has also continued to slope upwards with minor interruptions throughout the existence of TRIF, and has very much played a part in Arizona State becoming a premier national research university in a way that the University of Arizona already was, giving the state two strong research universities at a national level and allowing the state to be more robust in its overall innovation economy. The issuance of licenses based on technology transfer from the universities is incredibly important as a measure of being able to show economic activity translating from research to the private sector within Arizona. The revenue generated by these licenses is important for continuing to support ongoing research at the universities, but just as importantly, it creates a robust partnership between the public and private sector, which is essential for the innovation economy in the state. The return on investment from TRIF expenditures is a wonderful way of examining the broader economic impact that results from money put into tech transfer and research at the three state universities. As money is allocated through TRIF and dispersed to the states, it results not only in direct expenditures on research, but also further indirect activity through partnerships with the private sector, employment, job and economic growth, and the creation of a broader result in the ecosystem through the state universities that dramatically outstrips the expenditures from TRIF itself. One of the most important areas of economic activity that has been facilitated by TRIF funds is tech transfer activity in the biosciences. In the most recent year available in 2018, we analyzed the data for all three state universities in terms of R&D funding, innovation disclosures, patent applications filed and issued, licenses and options executed, and license income received, as well as startups. As you can see, there is a significant amount of activity at all three universities. And the results, particularly in life sciences, are important because this is one of the most important growing areas of economic activity in the country, not just in Arizona. In comparing Arizona to some neighboring states and states with similar overall economic and population sizes in their tech and science workforce, one of the things that was important to understand is to what extent Arizona has benefited from having a relatively strong workforce and how much that is tied to its innovation economy. Arizona's ranking of 14th on a per capita basis in the Milken Institute State Technology and Science Index allows it to outpace all of the peer states listed here, with the exception of Colorado and Utah, which are viewed as two of the strongest tech and science states in the country. This means that Arizona is better positioned to take advantage of TRIF funding, but also that its overall workforce in terms of job creation and the strength of the individuals involved has benefited from the money from TRIF to overall maintain and grow that innovation workforce. Another excellent metric that shows how TRIF has benefited Arizona in comparison to peer states has been how it has contributed to higher education's R&D expenditure growth over the period of 2009 to 2018. When looking at the external metric from the National Science Foundation, we can see that Arizona has consistently performed as well as or better than all of its peer states that it's being compared to in terms of overall growth. Having this growth in R&D expenditures is incredibly important, not just for the universities, but as we have shown, for its overall impact and level of commitment for the private sector, which benefits tremendously in Arizona from this collaboration and the tech transfer, patents issues, and license issues that result. As part of our overall analysis that we did of the TRIF program and its impact throughout the state, we spent time talking to stakeholders, not only at the universities, but in the private sector, and determining the overall value and worth of the various programs connected to TRIF to the Arizona economy, not just at the universities, but just as significantly more broadly in the private sector through technology transfer, impacts on the workforce, impacts on economic activity. Our report included case studies looking at some of the specific programs that benefited from TRIF in different parts of the state, and our discussions illuminated how TRIF not only provided a significant amount of activity at the universities in their metro areas, but more broadly through partnerships and activity in a variety of different counties and locations in Arizona. As a result of our analysis, we had 3 core recommendations that we wanted to convey to you today. The first is the inherent importance of continuing to maintain the current structure and funding levels of the TRIF program under Proposition 301 in order to ensure ongoing support for innovation at the Arizona public universities and in particular their partnerships with the private sector. The second recommendation, furthering efforts in technology transfer at the public universities and continuing to facilitate the establishment and growth of startups based off of this technology is just as important and significant. Third, prioritizing ongoing efforts at the universities in conjunction with the private sector to educate and create opportunities for workers from within Arizona and the life sciences and other scientific research prioritized by TRIF, so that the creation of and local hiring of and for high-paying knowledge-based jobs will continue to occur in Arizona and ensure that the state is not only competitive against other parts of the United States, but against international competition, and to allow the Arizona economy to continue and grow and thrive. We consider these recommendations to be essential as part of our overall analysis, and I want to thank you very much for participating in this presentation today.